Good afternoon and welcome to a collaborative webinar with ICF and ACMP Texas. I'm Barry Bridges. I am the San Antonio Regional Director for ACMP Texas, and we are very excited to be cooperating today to bring this webinar. I'm going to hand it off to Aurora Geis and let her take it from here.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Aurora Geis, and I'm currently the president of ICF San Antonio. And as Barry mentioned, this is a partnership between ACMP Texas and all the ICF Texas chapters. There are 4: Austin, Houston, North Texas, and San Antonio. And the partnership that I want to share with you all is that we really are looking at the strength of ACMP, which is organizational change, supporting the organizational side of change in organizations is what you all do, and you do it through people and process, where ICF is really focused on the people change. We are having the relationships with the individuals to help them shift mindsets. And so there's a tremendous amount of synergy between the two organizations. And what we have found is thought leadership is an area where we want to be able to provide you with the information on coaching best practices, just like ACMP provides to our coaches the change management best practices. And also awareness, what are these ICF coaching core competencies? And then, of course, for coaches, what are the ACMP change management core competencies that organizations like the PMP Institute has for your certifications? And one area that we'd like to continually develop is leading change. How do we both work together in organizations? And then, of course, networking. And Barry and I have been talking about how we can have events, a networking event. And so stay tuned for more on those opportunities. One other thing I wanted to mention, all of the coaching chapters do provide peer coaching. And what that means is if you're a coach, you can come to our site and identify a coach and select them to sharpen your coaching skills. So for those change managers that are moving into coaching and you're wanting to practice your coaching, you can develop basically a partnership with our coaches. In addition to that, something you may not know, we do offer membership for ACMP members at the ICF Global rate. And it's pretty easy. Just go to our site and you can sign up to become a member. If you sign up with one chapter, let's say if you're in Houston, you sign up with Houston, you can attend all of the Texas chapter events, just FYI. You don't have to join all the chapters, just one chapter. So now it is my pleasure to share with you some of the programming that we do. And that is today we have Judy Wilkins Smith, and she's going to be providing a session today on understanding your client's emotional DNA for lasting transformation. And she's going to help us explore limitations, possibilities. And I love the 3D, really excited about how you're going to do that, Judy, which is the power of your emotional genealogy. And a little bit about Judy. She's a credentialed ICF CCE provider with a strong track record in training ICF coaches. And this is truly eye-opening and transformational modalities that she provides. And many of her students report heightened success rates with their own clientele. She's a world-renowned in family patterns, systemic work, and constellations expert. She's also a motivational speaker and author of Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, a powerful guide to transformation through disentangling multi-generational patterns. Sounds true, and I bet it is. Judy has 18 years of expertise in assisting high-performing individuals, Fortune 500 executives, and legacy families to end limiting cycles and reframe challenges into exciting adventures, lasting breakthroughs, and peak performance. Judy, we're so honored to have you here, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be with you today. I said to Aurora, I almost thought I was in Houston because I'm heading down to Houston this weekend to go and teach. But it's lovely to be in San Antonio. And I did tell her I've been on the barges, I've done the river walk, so I know a little bit about San Antonio. So thank you for having me today. I know it's hot all over. It's hot here too, but I'll take Texas anytime. So yeah, talking about emotional DNA. So what is it? Your emotional DNA is you inherit. You don't just inherit physical DNA, you also inherit your emotional DNA. Your patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, inactions, careers, ups and downs in careers. What I often find when I work with a client is they will go all the way up and suddenly they come to see me because they've hit a brick wall and they don't understand why. And when we have a look at the family system, you can see quite clearly that they've U-turned at the same place as someone else who then didn't conclude or bring that to resolution. And so what we know is that what's excluded or what is not brought to resolution creates a pattern that expands and repeats. So again, your emotional DNA, you inherit your patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions. So when I'm busy coaching a client, an executive client, the first thing we do is we do a deep dive into their career and a deep dive into their family system. And I have people ask me all the time, are you crazy? A CEO will never tell you his life story. And they all do, because they all sense that at some level, something is either stopping them or something's galvanizing them and they can't quite figure out what it is. And so what we do is we use systemic work and constellations. Systemic work then is the study of you within the entire system. You didn't get to be you in a vacuum. You're a result of all of those generations who came before you, all of those thoughts, feelings, actions, and patterns, and you inherit them in two ways. So what we encourage people to do these days is, if you have access to it, go look at your genealogy, not just to see where you belong, because that's step one, but to see what events happened in your family system, because those begin to set off patterns as well. And in fact, what they do is epigenetically, if it's significant enough and it impacts you and it has a large effect, that then creates a blueprint and an imprint on the triggering mechanism that becomes a blueprint for lasting generations of behavioral patterns. So we have someone who can't make money. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. When we have a look, we see further back in the family, someone who did have money and lost it. And now there's that whole mindset of it comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. And what we do is we set that up in 3D so that they can see, hear, and walk through what it's like to see that out of your head and in front of you. Now you're seeing the relationships between the different members in the system. There is more and more pieces are coming to light. You'll say to me, oh, hold on. I remember my grandfather or my great-grandfather did. And suddenly you begin to hear the language and the thoughts and the feelings and the actions cascading down. So why do they come to you or your client? Because you or your client are the change agents. In every single system at all times, there's a pattern trying to stop and there's a pattern trying to start. The pattern trying to stop was once a solution for something, but it's outlived its usefulness. And so now it needs to stop and it needs you to write a new chapter. So where money was, it comes, it goes, it comes, it goes, you may be the one who says, it comes, I build, it comes, I build. And so we work very, very strongly with a reframe. What are you giving us to work with? What are your frustrations? Because that's the pattern trying to stop. What are your dreams and desires and goals? Because that's the pattern trying to start. Now, in every frustration that you have, in every bomb that you have, in every really bad situation, there is always a gift. It's not a Pollyanna thing. There is always a gift. There is a seed of something trying to start through you. And so we look at the two. Which one needs to stop and become the wisdom that you draw on? And what is the chapter that only you can write? So why is that important for you and your clients? Well, in this work, I do organizational work and I do personal or individual work. Very often in an organization where you're struggling at a level with a team or a dynamic, first of all, if you put it into 3D, we can see what you're dealing with and we can hear the language around it. But very often where you're struggling comes from one person. Something's affecting that. Some sentence, some languaging is affecting that. And what is it? And how can we use it wisely? And so with change management, it's what happened that got us here? Because we know that what got us here was really good, but it won't get us there. That's your pattern trying to stop and the other one trying to start. Now, the beauty, and a constellation, by the way, is the 3D representation. Typically, if I have a live event, I use live representatives. And here's the interesting piece. We are all very able to sense into each other's systems accurately. We don't always know that we can because we haven't been taught that. But if you've ever watched American Idol or America's Got Talent or any one of those, and you see somebody get into that moment and you've got goosebumps, you just sensed into their system. So what a constellation does is it literally makes the invisible visible and the unconscious conscious. And I use it a lot in Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies when they're stuck. They'll call me in and say, can we have a look in 3D? Can we actually see what's happening? And can you listen to us so you can tell us what you're hearing? What is the language? When you trace the language back, you'll see that it begins with an event. It's not the event that's the creator of our language. It's the decision about the event. So it's what are the decisions that we made that then began to create thoughts, feelings, and actions that turned into, and you spoke about it earlier, Aurora, the mindsets. What are the mindsets? Because we're pretty potent co-creators. The minute the brain tells the body a story that the body believes, that's the new truth. And so you want to be really aware of what it is you're telling yourself. Now, in coaching, when we look at leaders, there are probably about easily 15 to 20 categories of leaders, and they all began not just in the workplace, they began at home with their primary pattern makers. And so you want to see what is serving and what is not. In change management, or when we're dealing with organizations, we look at, is this pattern that we're seeing true to this level, or did it begin higher up or lower down? Because what we know is that often what's showing here is a symptom of what's higher up. As above, so below. Now, the beauty of systemic work and constellations is that it's super complex and incredibly simple. If you begin with the incredibly simple, you're going to blow yourself away when you have conversations with your clients. And the incredibly simple looks like this. In all living systems, there are 3 natural orders. Everyone has a right to belong. If anyone's right to belong is denied for any reason whatsoever, someone from a later generation will begin to repeat that pattern in order to bring it to light so that you can restore balance. And there is a role and ranking for every system. In families, it's easy, oldest to youngest. But in organizations, it's not. You've got to look at what the driver is in the organization, or you're going to miss it and wonder why you keep hitting all sorts of problems. So if you go into an organization, is it tenure? Is it by age? Is it by skill set? Is it by rank? Because one of those is your dominant ranking, and you want to understand that. So that is the systemic approach. When you go into using a constellation, you look at 3 things. There are always 3 principles in all living systems, and they're in operation at all times in one form or another. Belonging, balance of give and receive, and order. Now, belonging and order are very much together. If I know where I belong in my family system, I know how I belong. And the same holds true in organizations. If I know where I belong, I know how I belong, which is the order. Barry, I know, I actually sent handouts before that. Aurora, did you get those? Great. Now, I sent handouts because it's much easier if you get those afterwards. You'll be able to listen again and you'll hear all of those natural orders and you'll hear the 3 principles. But the reason they're important is if you listen to your clients, every single issue that they have will resolve into one of those 3. Balance of give and receive, order, or belonging. Do I feel like I belong here? Do people feel like they belong in this organization? How do I belong? Or where do I belong? I had an organization I worked with, a very, very large one, and their complaint was that everybody felt just a little out of place. They couldn't quite find their place. Well, when we had a look at the history, they said to me, this organization was started by Mr. X. So he's in the first place and everything cascades down from there. But then when they told me the story of Mr. X had a situation when he was young. I think he had polio. And his mother said to him, you are not going to just sit and do nothing. She started making candy and he was the one who dipped it in chocolate. So who began the organization? Not him, she did. And because she was excluded, everybody felt just a little out of place. And it's really that simple. The minute we put her in, everybody else could find their place. And so what we see in organizations sometimes is when you have people who feel like they don't belong, it's to ask who went missing first. What happened? When did the not belonging start? So questions that I use a lot are, when did this first start happening for you? What was happening in your life at the time? What did you make it mean about you? What did you make it mean about others? Is there someone else in your family or in your company who has the same pattern? Because in that case, we're dealing with an inherited pattern or a multi-generational pattern. If you look in organizations, you quite often find that there is a burdened position. It's that position that everybody says, you know what, they last for 6 months and then they're out of here. We cannot fill that position. If you have that, you want to look at the very first person who occupied that position or the one where the pattern started and have a look at how they left. Were they booted out? Was there something not said? Because if that happened, there is an unconscious loyalty that builds to fill that vacuum of somebody being excluded. And until you resolve that, you cannot onboard and you cannot offboard because that position is not vacant. Now with leaders, some of my favorite ones are things like whirlwind leaders. How long have you seen this meaning? Yes, somebody asked, have you seen this meaning of belonging play out from a diversity and inclusion point of view? Yes, and sometimes too much. We all get to a place at stages where nobody understands how they belong. And so one of the ways that we look at that in a company, if we have this issue, is to actually set up the company from the beginning using 3D. Aurora, if you want to switch that on, I'm hoping my phone is going to take it so I can show that. But what we do is we set up a representative using pieces of paper or using blocks, whatever it is, for every single person who was ever in the company, whether they came and left or they came and stayed. And you begin to see how many exclusions there are, because even if you leave a company, your imprint still stays. Your belonging piece still stays. And then we begin to see who feels excluded and why, who feels included and how, what is not being represented. And it's a very easy way of not getting heated, but giving everybody their place. It's a lovely one to do. You put it down and you can see how everybody belongs, and we set them up, cast in order of appearance. It's that simple. So yes, I have worked with that. Does that, Sonia, does that, sorry, Barry, go ahead.
I believe your phone basically went on freeze, and so all we see is a black screen.
Well, that's not helpful. If everybody doesn't mind me scooting around the side, I will have a look and see what it's doing. Okay. If you're willing to give me 1 minute, I can fix that. Otherwise, I'm going to talk you through it. Which one do we want? Happy to keep talking, but happy to just put it back on.
I'd say go ahead and fix it.
Go for it. Okay.
Anyone have any comments or questions they would like to throw in?
Please, those I can answer while I'm fixing.
Oh, Barry, I just want to say thank you. I was able to see in person Mrs. Smith, Wilkins Smith, maybe 7 years ago now. So this is so like a homecoming, listen to all these concepts again, hoping they just sink even further.
Oh, wait a bit. I want to know who that is.
This is Sonia Ware. You were in Houston, and it was around systems and money. And we actually did work in session. And I remember somebody being the corporation and somebody being my father. And the way they were able to embody their essence was mind blowing. And I really had a shift in that weekend.
Ah, there we go. I think we're about to get it. Yep. Yes.
All right, we see it.
Yay. Okay. So Sonia, oh, there you are. Yes. Hello,
Yes. Hello, hola.
Lovely to see you. Okay, so yeah, when we talk about dimensionalizing an issue, typically what you'll see exactly as Sonia described it is we use live representatives for every part of the issue. So whatever the issue is, we break down into what are the components of this issue. And then like I would have with Sonia, I would say to set it up for me the way that it feels for you. And she might have these two that you can see facing each other. She might have someone else who comes in and maybe they're looking out. And she might have someone who stands right close to that. Now, just setting that up for people is often a big breakthrough because all of a sudden they can see and feel what's happening for them. And I would begin as a facilitator, as a systemic facilitator to ask, these two are really close together. Is that the way it was? Yes. Why is that one standing over there? Well, they were never really that close to the family and they're always the outsider in an organization. And this one who's looking out, oh, that's the person for research and development. They're never available. They're always gone. Don't know what to do with them. Is there anyone in your family who is like that? Oh yeah, that would be my brother. And so suddenly we start to connect the dots and we see, now hold on. Sometimes when I would like to throw my boss out the window, the first question I ask is, so which of your parents would that be? Or I really struggle with this colleague, which sibling is that? So the thing to also be aware of with systems is what you don't resolve in your family system, you very often look to resolve in your career. Where you get stuck in your family system, you often get stuck in your career. And each of them are trying to help the other to resolve it and to make it bigger, because the beauty of all of this is in every single place that you are stuck. If a client ever tells you they're stuck, they're in a great place because now their box is too small for them and they're wanting a bigger box. So all they're really telling you is, I keep hitting the brick wall. And if you look at it and you just back up a couple of yards, it's not a brick wall, it's the rise to the next step up. That's all it is. So dimensionalizing it is a really, really useful tool. I worked with a CFO who actually, strangely enough, is now headquartered in San Antonio. And I remember walking into his office, he was with an even bigger group, and he said to me, all right, I've heard that you look at these things in 3D. I don't want any of that woo-woo stuff. No, none of this constellation business. So I said to him, sure. So what are we looking at? So we wrote down the different pieces on Post-it notes because that's what everybody does. And we had a look. And then I said to him, you know what, I'm really very visual. Could we just put them down on the floor and then you map it out for me a little bit? And he put it down on the floor and he said, they go this way and they go this way. And this one doesn't connect with this one. And this one's over here. And it took us about an hour and a half. And he said, I've got it. I haven't been able to solve this for 2 years and it's done. And he looked at me and he went, you did a constellation, didn't you? And I said, yep. What a constellation really is it's teaching people to, instead of using this, to use multiple senses, to have the embodied experience, and also to have what we call the head, heart, gut connection. And for most of you, you will know that the head, heart, gut is a brain system of its own. If you've got really good leaders who go by gut instinct, it also means that if you look at it and ask them, the heart is quite often open. And when the heart and the gut are open, the frontal lobe switches on and we're off to the races. So head, heart, gut connection, when somebody says to me, I don't want to do that stuff, I say to them, do you understand that when you only work from here, you're only giving your company 33% of your capacity? And that usually kind of turns things around a bit. With dimensionalizing something, it also allows us to see the patterns very quickly. Did it just happen once, or did it happen again and again? And what is it asking to do now? And when people can see it, they can't talk themselves out of it because it's right in front of them. When they can touch it or interact with it, suddenly it's okay to have those conversations we hadn't had before. And suddenly we start to see and hear and contemplate things very, very differently. Why is that important? What you're also doing is for the company and the individual, you're now getting into the world of neuroscience. Now we're into neuroplasticity. And so clients will often say to me, this is hard work. And I say to them, no, one new thought, one new feeling, one new action. That's it. Just one of each. And you're already beginning to rewire your brain. Because the minute you do that, you're pulling yourself out of the multi-generational nervous system and you're creating something stronger on the other side. And so now instead of getting pulled back into that all of the time, you're able to turn yourself around and hopefully not kill them in between. You're able to turn yourself around and you're able to move towards what's possible. And you'll hear a lot about possibility thinking. It gets a bad rap. I think people think that possibility thinking is, that's a nice idea, how do we get there? You're working in possibility thinking every single day of your life. So just to demystify it, the minute you want to do something, your brain is literally looking for the possibilities. All that we're saying when we invite people to think and think about what's possible is what's next. Not just what's possible, what's next. So when we talk about transformation, it is applicable and it is practical because people tune out when they can't apply what they're seeing. This allows you to very quickly and easily start a conversation with your client using figurines like this or pieces of paper and get them to move. When the body is moving, the brain is moving. When the brain is moving, it's starting to look for possibilities. Now you're pulling them out of their set train of thought and into something new. And the same happens if you're crossing from family system to organizational system. Often it's a little less dangerous to tackle your career, or it feels a little less dangerous, or it's a little less in your face. So it's a very nice trick that the two systems have. They really buddy each other rather well. What you couldn't complete here, let's have a look and see if we can sort out over here. What you can't complete here, let's see if you can complete at home. So one of the other leaders that I often smile about are what I call the hidden leaders, the 24-hour leaders. And I'm sure you've all had them. So your client comes in and you're getting right to decision point and they go, I need 24 hours to think about that. If that's a pattern for them, you may want to ask who's at home and who's the hidden leader that's giving them the 24 hours to debate it with, because very often there's a hidden leader outside of the company. And if you've got that happening, you have a wild card you didn't know about. So back to your inherited DNA. Inherited DNA is also not a terrible thing. In fact, it's a very helpful thing. It contains all the clues that you need to either not do it again but smarter, see what happened that went wrong, look for the gift, and reframe. So it is a very elegant, hands-on way of reframing an issue from an issue to a solution. And you will, if you watch people at a live event, that Sonia, you can speak to this because I'm the facilitator, but you're the person who's experienced it. But it happens very quickly, and it is usually lasting. What people, and I want to just actually give you a chance to say something about that if you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember watching you do it before I got involved, like before I did it. And I thought, I hope nobody picks me because I don't know how to feel the energy of the person they're speaking of. But when you're asked to select, like who's going to play your father, for example, your energy actually picks the right energy. It's the strangest thing. I mean, it's phenomenal. And I remember the guy playing my dad going off to a corner, like not being involved in the whole scenario. And later he explained that he just felt an energy of sort of checking out in his own world. And that was, you know, really something I had lived. So it was incredible to see happen. Yeah, it just comes alive, and it feels like the energy does the work once we set up the scenario and put people to work. And then you see it happen. I mean, we did a couple, I think one around money, one around divorce. And the money one was with corporate and my business. And there was a guy who played corporate. And like some of the things we talked about then, I don't even think about anymore. They're a part of how I do business and have relationships. So the learning sticks, if that makes sense. The epiphany, or yeah.
Aurora, were you going to say something?
No, well, I'm thinking
Okay.
a lot. No.
Okay, so yeah, what you're tapping into, and we know that we do this, is we tap into each other's systems very effectively and quite easily. You know this when you walk into a room and you walk up to someone, you go, whoa, I don't want to get too close to that. They look heated, or gosh, that's friendly, I could get close to that. We're experiencing their system and seeing how it matches with ours and how we can fit in. And so one of the other things that I would say to people is, so that they can get a sense of that very quickly, and it makes sense, is you want to take 3 pieces of paper, and this is an exercise for everybody. Take 3 pieces of paper and put them left to right. And on the first one, you want to write family system. And on the next one, you want to write career or field of study or profession. And on the third one, choose another system you're a part of. It could be church, it could be sports, it could be whatever it is you want. Now, if you place those from left to right in front of you, pick up your pen, and with each one, notice, move your pen towards each one in turn, and notice your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, because there will be some around each system. Right. Now you've had a sense of different systems that you are sensing into. And when you're working with an organization, I've languaged it when I work with organizations very practically. They understand the balance of give and receive, the belonging, the order, so that they can use it in their careers and in the organization itself, because this is how it's structured. In fact, many of my clients are also engineers because they understand the building blocks. They go, oh, if this one's out, then this one's out. If this one's out. And so you learn what to put in that's going to support, and what isn't supporting right now. And the other beauty of using this dimensional system is that we're now focusing on the figures. We're not focusing on you. So we're giving you enough space to be able to look. We're focusing on the issue, not the personality. And this was something in Australia that they commented on a lot. I worked with one of the big banking systems there, and they had all sorts of things going on. But when we could put it down on pieces of paper with arrows so that it formed a directional marker, and they could lay it down, they could see exactly why they were having problems without any naming, blaming, shaming, or pointing. And this removes that. The other piece that we know is in systems, everything belongs and everything has a right to belong and everything serves a purpose. So what also happens when you use this approach is there is no judgment. It simply is what has happened. What has happened? Does it serve? Doesn't it serve? What do we want to do with that? What do we need to add? What do we need to subtract? Sometimes what do we need to join? And sometimes what do we need to separate? So what do I mean by that? When I go into a company, quite often people will say to me, we are exhausted. We're on the clock 24/7. We're doing 3 jobs. When you set it up, you can see quite clearly that the 3 need to be separated out, not joined together. So it gives them that visual that goes, oh, that's why this isn't working. So now, again, you're taking it out of it's on me, or there's a blame, or it's my fault. You're simply logically looking. But the logically looking also allows you to logically feel and be open, which allows you to logically sense with your gut. But in the end, what you wind up with is very much happier workers, very much happier clients and coachees, and people who will then quite naturally go deeper in. So for me, the entry point always is I need to understand the client. I need to understand what their requirement is. And there's another lovely piece with this. When I work with facilitators, they will say, but we could go deeper. And I'd say, no, what did your client ask you for? Because that's where you stop. You can show them that there may be another step, but your client is your pacer, not you. So as a facilitator, you really learn as well to respect not just the pace, but the client and the mandate. And the other piece is if you find that you're working with an organization and it starts to cross over into the personal, I stop immediately and I warn them. This is about to go over into the personal. You're a CEO. This could make you vulnerable. We need to stop right here and contract. Are you okay to do that? Or do you need us to do this offsite? And that is very, very important. So it allows you to also look at boundaries. I hope we didn't lose it. It allows you to look at boundaries as well. The other piece of a system is that it has a conscience. Every single system has a conscience. And that is the summary of the unwritten rules. But unwritten rules are often more powerful than the codified rules. So you want to look at what are the unwritten rules that will get me where I need to go to in this company. And who do I need to take from and who do I need to give to? So this process also allows you to see flow. Is your flow correct? It allows you to look at introducing products. Am I introducing it in the right way? Does it belong here right now? Will it take? Will it not take? So it is a very multi-use mechanism for exploring a system and also for exploring your own emotions. Sonia, again, would have experienced a number of emotions, but in this modality, it's okay to look. Where we don't normally talk about things, here we do. Because we talk about it in a way that is very safe. It's very logical. And yet when it starts to flip, it moves from head to heart. Sonia, would that be accurate?
That is accurate. And I guess what's coming up for me is wondering, have you done this with clients virtually this way, like you're showing us?
Yes, I have. I do it quite frequently with clients. If they're stuck and we need to look at an issue, we'll look at it this way, and immediately we set it up, they begin to see. I think visual is always the first and the biggest. And the minute they begin to see, they begin to feel. So they have thoughts and then they begin to feel. And what we know is that we're very able as human beings to transfer our feelings and thoughts onto inanimate or other objects, which is another reason that we can represent so accurately. But transferring it onto an inanimate object, yes. I've had people, when I'm sitting across from them with a board, pick up a piece and throw it. Yet they've sensed into that very, very well. So yes, it's a very helpful way to do that. I prefer to do it in person simply because I can see the whole body. And of course, that gives us different clues than just here. But when the pandemic came in, you get to learn really quickly that you can learn a lot from here up too. In fact, I had one client who said to me, I am exhausted. And I said, what happened? I went to work today for the first time. Okay. Do you know how many clues there are in a whole body? I'm used to this. All of a sudden, the leg was going and the arm was going. And yeah, we've gotten used to this. But with a whole body, there's so much more. And this is why systemic work is so effective. We're used to this. But when you're seeing and participating with the entire system, you're getting used to an entire system. And you begin to understand that not only do you have your nervous system, you have a multi-generational nervous system that you are very tightly locked into. And that it's waiting for you to grow it. It's always waiting for you to grow it. So people get really concerned about taking a step. A lot of people will say to me, but my mother's going to feel small, or my CEO won't like it if I do that. The system is waiting for you to grow. And if you land it in a way that is, and this is the other piece, if you land it well, the system gets to move. If you say, hey, stupid, it's not going to help you, but it's something that is also part of this is an invitational approach. It's not a do this approach, it's an invitational approach. And often with executives, they will say to me, I know all this stuff. Why don't my people know it? And I'll say to them, because if that's the way you're telling them, they're probably sitting under their desks and praying. If you've got genius, you've got to be able to land your genius. This teaches you how to do that in a very invitational but direct way. And it also goes very quickly to the heart of the matter. If you are doing a constellation, we don't just sit here, we go very deep, very quickly. But the other piece, when I told you any issue will resolve into balance of give and receive, belonging and order, there's another elegant part to that. It ends with the same. If you had lack of balance, how do you bring balance? If you were out of order, where is the order? If you didn't belong, how do you belong? If there is too much giving, how do we bring that back down? So it literally tells you, here is the issue and here is the resolution. So when you're finished, the two should be looking at each other. That said, sometimes an issue with belonging is because there is an issue with order, and you want to be sure which of the two you're looking at. So when I do a constellation, one of the other things that you will find is many people who do constellations go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. I don't. I do a constellation and then I ask the person to leave the room for one reason. If they've had a piece of work done, I don't want them going back into their head, which is probably what started the issue in the first place. I want them to sit with what the insights they've received. But in the room, I then say to everybody, ask me questions. Why did I do this? Why did we put this person up? Which of the three principles was out? What did you hear people saying? What were the hot words? What actions did you see? When did you notice that person starting to turn? So now they're learning to read the principles. They're learning to understand the natural orders. They're listening to language. They're hearing thoughts. They're watching feelings and actions in play, and they're learning how to put those into action systemically. And by the way, I don't say to somebody, so you did. I will ask, are you doing? So you're sad. Are you sad? Again, it's invitational. At the end of this, by the time you walk out of an event, you understand what the 3 principles are, how to get into a conversation of this sort, how to get out of the conversation, and how to leave your client a step further than they were. Will they have a lot more questions? Absolutely. They're probably going to have more questions than answers. This is typically what I hear. I have more questions. But it opens up the process. It's also a way for a coach to not get tired or burned out. It's never the same. Every single client has an extremely unique language. It can be one word, it can be one sentence, it can be one phrase that's going to turn your client on or off. And they learn to see that and understand it themselves at a very deep level. So you're serving not just the career, you're serving the personal. So both of those remain intact. So for systemic work and emotional DNA, yes, you inherit it, and inheriting it is not a death sentence. It's not any kind of a sentence. It's an invitation to a next step. In a company, you inherit a whole pile of problems, but you also inherit a huge set of opportunities. And where it looks like a problem, all it is it's waiting to become a solution once you reframe it. And that is very much the art of systemic work, constellations, and emotional DNA. Questions?
Judy, we had a question earlier from Martha.
Sure.
How do you restore the balance when there have been injustices around gender and or race biases?
Okay, so the way to, okay, this would be a whole constellation. I'm going to try and show you that. What you're doing to restore balance is when there have been injustices, when there have been prejudices, what are we looking at? We're looking at belonging. Something or someone has been excluded, right? So what we might do is, let's suppose great-grandmother was excluded. Grandmother was excluded. Mother, come on, mother, stand up. Mother was excluded. What I would do with my client is I would represent those with live representatives, and my client comes and says, I can't stand this. I'm being excluded. Who else was excluded? They were all excluded. Okay. Do you want to have a look and tell them, for every one of you who was excluded, watch me. Watch me as I take my place in ways that all of you could not. For every single one of you that was excluded before, I will take my place and I bring balance to all of those behind me. Thank you all for standing up so that I could stand up. I will do it differently. I will be the one who brings change. Now be aware, when you bring change, there is something very important about a change agent. When you start to bring change, if you bring it in viciously, you become the new perpetrator or the new excluder. If you bring it in with heart and you bring it in with dignity and you bring it in with happiness, you change not just you and not just this, but you change communities and you change mindsets. And now you've begun a completely new and different emotional DNA pattern. Does that answer the question? Whoever it was that asked me, let me know if that answers it or if there's more that you want to know. But what it is you are literally showing and acknowledging. You're acknowledging what is. You're no longer excluding. And you're acknowledging what's possible. So you're moving from what is to what's possible. And when you do that, you don't just grow, the side effects for the system and the communities around you also grow. And it may take a while, but it will shift. More questions?
Judy, I am curious for
Absolutely.
to ask a question here. Have you had experience with hostile working environments and how you were able to uncover that and bring some restoration to those environments?
Yes. So with a hostile working environment, often what we miss is that there may be more than one victim and more than one perpetrator. And you want to look very carefully at what has caused the perpetrator and what has caused the victim. And you want to dimensionalize all of those and include all. And then what I will very often do is ask what the victim needs and what the perpetrator needs. And quite frequently, the perpetrator in their time and place was also a victim. And so what you see is that repetition of the victim, perpetrator, rescuer, victim, perpetrator, rescuer. But once we recognize that there is more to it than that and more is possible, we go from victim, perpetrator, rescuer to enabler, inviter, and empowerer, which is a very different triangle. So there are 7 levels, not just 7 levels of leadership, but 7 levels of money, 7 levels of thought. And it goes from survival to relationships, which are transactional, to the expert, to the beginning of thinking. When you have a client who says there has got to be more to life than this, be happy, because what you're doing in that situation is they're saying, I am aware more is possible. And as soon as they are aware more is possible, you're going into the upper triangle, which is, I have a voice. I invite you to come too. I am in service of the world. And that is your upper triangle. And it's literally just waiting for somebody to say, I wonder what more is possible. So for me, when I'm working with coaches, I will often say to them, ask your clients what more they think is possible. Because the minute you ask that question, you open the door to the other triangle and up you go. So yes, and with the hostile environments, it's really for each to see the other, because each is scared of the other. We don't often realize that, but each has fear. Each has fear. What are you going to take away from me? How are you going to exclude me? Well, how about if I'm not taking away from you and you're adding something? Now we have a very different equation. So it's very much about the art of the reframe as well. We tend to reframe one way and then that becomes the mindset. When we can rewire the mindset for a different, bigger possibility, we have something entirely different and something where many more people can belong. In fact, one of the places was struggling with its vision and mission, and they had a vision statement. And the minute we put that down, they came in, the CEO and the CFO and the CHRO, I believe, came in because they wanted to know what was going on. The minute we laid the statement down on the floor, all the representatives went out the door. So what we did was we broke the statement down and into individual words and put them side by side, but spaced them out. And very quickly it became obvious that there was one word. The minute we took the one word out, everybody came back in. So it was, we know there's something off, but now we can see it. And when we can see it, we can identify it. And when we can identify it, we can say, no, thank you, or yes, please. And so the new vision statement became, thank you for being in here, but you don't belong here. Here is the statement that represents us. And everybody could come back in. So it's often as simple as a word or a phrase. And in fact, if you're listening to your clients, and I'm sure you do this, I listen in layers. I want to hear, what are the hot words? What are the repetitive words? What are the themes? What am I listening to? Where did they come from? When did that first start for you? What was happening at the time? What did you make it mean about you? What did you make it mean about others? Does this pattern exist elsewhere for you and has never been resolved, or elsewhere in the family? are you now the one representing that, and it's your turn to change it? Yeah. Good. Perfect.
And
So
Weston,
Judy, oh, go ahead, there.
and Weston also asked, isn't this also a choice in that individuals are choosing to continue the past behaviors or to grow?
Oh gosh, yes it is, but it's an unconscious choice. Very often people say, I didn't do that on purpose. No, the first thing I tell people when I walk in is, you're going to see that you have a lot of unconscious loyalties, because we're going to show them to you. And then they go, but I didn't do that. No, I said unconscious. They come from not just your mother and your grandmother, but way back. And they keep echoing down, and we don't even know that we're in that pattern. It is a deeply unconscious choice. It's when it becomes conscious that it becomes uncomfortable, and we begin to want to do something about it. Sonia.
Yeah, it was very similar. I'm looking at the figures, and I like the way you turned. First, she was facing the 3 generations that come before, and then you turned it around to now you will stand in that stead, right? So that's a very simplistic example. But if I think about some of my clients who might be that, you know, yellow hair and red dress, there's so much hurt and grieving or lamentation that they want to sit in before they get to the possible.
Yes, okay, so here's, if I rolled up my sleeves when you said that, yes. I'm actually doing a lot of work at the moment with victim and perpetrator, and my question is this. We can do this, the hurt and the lamentation and the grief. We can do this for the next 6 generations. We can. We've been doing it for 6 generations. Which one of you is going to say, stop? Which one of you is going to start celebrating? I have a client who always says, yes, you can use me. He's Jewish. And he said to me, you don't understand. Jews were born to suffer. And I said, and you don't understand. If you keep doing that, that's what they will keep thinking. When are we going to change that? So Barry, to your point, deeply unconscious, and yet it's very much there. But it's when we make the conscious choices, the mindful choices, that everything changes. One thought, one feeling, one action.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And thank you all so much. It's been such a pleasure to be in San Antonio.
Judy, thank you for a phenomenal discussion today. This is great. Thank you.
I didn't hear that. Can you say that again? You clicked out.
Sure. This is Gloria Archer here, and I just wanted to personally tell you thank you so much for a very insightful discussion today. This is very, very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Judy, so much. Incredible information and so much to process. Let me hand it back to Aurora for just a minute to cover 2 or 3 slides. If you don't mind sticking with us, we want to talk to you about a couple of things with ACMP and with ICF.
Wonderful. Judy, thank you again. What an incredible, insightful session that you've shared for us to break through so much of our changing that has held us back. When you mentioned the client about being Jewish, reminded me of when they were in Egypt, right? And they were slaves. And it took 40 years, a whole generation, to get the new mindset, the new generation to say, we're going to the promised land. And I love how you're saying that here. So thank you. It's been incredibly insightful. So a little bit of the announcements that we have. Oh, by the way, Judy, if people want to learn more about your organization and what you do, where can they go to?
A number of places. They can go to judywilkins-smith.com. I will be doing an event in Houston this weekend. So that's another one. But the book is also extremely helpful, Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. And then if you have any meditations, people, I have now created the meditation of the mother and the meditation of the father, which takes you all the way back into the generations and then brings you all the way forward. And the person who did the composing and production for me is the same person who does it for Joe Dispenza. So I am very lucky and privileged.
Fantastic. Thank you again for that, Judy. And it would be an incredible opportunity to come and see you in Houston. Okay, so a couple of quick announcements, just so that you all know, we do have some special interest groups that ICF San Antonio is hosting. We typically do that the first Thursdays. We also have a member connect where if you're wanting to learn about the membership or the members, you can connect with coaches that come every Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. We also have an ICF Southeast Regional webinar series that's every second Thursday. And then, of course, today you're benefiting from the ACMP ICF partnership series that we are conducting these events every quarter. And the in-person event, I'm hoping, Barry, we can have one set up in San Antonio, but also do it in Houston, Austin, and in Dallas. And upcoming events, if you haven't heard about Jessica Bronzer, she is providing a vertical leadership development series along with Anna Sparks that is going to be kicking off in the fall. There are 4 sessions. And if you don't know about vertical leadership development, it's basically how executives or leaders in the marketplace are continuing to build their learning and growing, both from a coaching standpoint, leadership standpoint, but also from a technical competency or leadership perspective as well. And for those of you who don't know, there's a mobile app, and we would ask you to download the Wild Apricot mobile app. ACMP uses Wild Apricot, so does all the ICF chapters, except for Dallas. They're not there yet, but you can keep track of all the events and get notifications for the events that you're signing up on. And then next is we also have a YouTube channel that you can go to and take a look at all of the events that we've had. And that is a great segue for what Barry's going to share.
Well, thank you. And acmptexas.org is where you can find out about events and membership that we have coming up. We are on LinkedIn in a group that you can follow, as well as putting some webinars up on YouTube on our YouTube channel. That's at ACMP Texas 8127 on YouTube. And I will say there's an excellent series there on design thinking that we recorded back in the fall. Worth the time to take and listen to that. So thanks again for being with us today, and back to you, Aurora.
Okay, fantastic. Also, we're on all social channels, so feel free to look us up. ICF San Antonio is. And with that, we want to thank you today and hopefully see you at the next quarterly event. Thanks again.
Have a great day.